Again, welcome back to Politics for the Culture. We're back with part two of our conversation with the incomparable DJ producer Rich Medina on what the impact was of not only hip hop in politics but hip hop during the pandemic. For the Black community, music in the absence of freedom has equated to some level of freedom, right? The ability to kind of melodically use our voice, melodically use our rhythm, melodically use the instruments that are there to speak of a future, whether it was a utopian future, talk about the notion of liberation, even using those songs as tools for that liberation, right? And not to kind of put undue pressure on music, but that is kind of like the central theme of this notion of Black music. So, whether gospel carries to blues, which then carries to jazz, which then carries to R&B and soul, which then ultimately carries to hip hop, there's always kind of been this through line, right, of the ability for a marginalized people to tell their story through this means. Kind of centering on that point, right, this idea, as somebody who, gets a chance to kind of look at music generationally and think about music generationally and influence music in past iterations and current iterations. What's your take on kind of the direction of Black music, Black and brown music? Do you think that, artists are not kind of using that, that kind of, again, intrinsic connection to the ancestors to kind of speak that voice? Do you feel it's out there but just not getting out to the masses because of our inability to control the industry? From your vantage point, where A, where do you think we are? B, where do you think we're going with this music thing?
I think that we're at a plateau.
Okay.
I think that we're at a plateau on topic. And the reason I say that is because if you look within the vocabulary of hip hop from a music standpoint, not the culture at large, we're not talking about graffiti and b-boying, and we are talking about MCing and DJing, but when you look at the culture from a musical standpoint, there's no argument about the delta between commercial hip hop and underground hip hop. The fact that there's a debate within the hip hop community about which side of hip hop represents us better. The commercial side, with artists who are now part and parcel of the pop machine, who are now part and parcel of being able to get large advances on record deals and make good on those advances and recoup that money, and then go on to become financially successful. And then they're charged with the responsibility of, now it's up to you to create your own label and bring up other artists so that they can then have the opportunity like you did. And on the non-commercial side, on the more pirate underground side, that is labeled as backpacker hip hop or underground hip hop or conscious hip hop. And some people on the commercial side have driven a vocabulary home that says that the day of that vocabulary is over. We should now be celebrating our riches. But the caveat in that is that those riches aren't ours. Those riches are the riches of that particular artist who happens to reach that echelon. So now you have people who are kind of functioning within this backpacker life, if you will, where you don't have the reach, you don't have the power, you're not inside the echelon to be influential. So that backpacker moniker becomes a piece of condescension. And the commercial model becomes something to celebrate. And the great deal of hip hop artists who are in the commercial realm aren't talking about race relations and the dynamics of the world at a high level at all. They're talking about the material things that they have, how good they feel about it, poking fun at people that don't have it, or in some ways trying to inspire people. You could have it like I have it now. Not necessarily I am here to represent my people at the highest level that I can. And while I'm doing that and having fun, I have to sneak the healthy dynamics of opening people's minds up to politics and the interior dynamics of politics and race relations in order for them to have a broader worldview and to be able to help themselves. Because you can't help someone that's not equipped to help themselves. They become dependent. And that dependency is part of the government model that was put in place at emancipation. I can't enslave you anymore, but I can make you so dependent on the system that you are theoretically my slave anyway. And then I'm going to tax you higher. And I'm going to give you a smaller plot of land. And I'm going to give you less opportunities to get into the equity ownership, home ownership American model. Because if we let too many of y'all in here, y'all are going to pass us.
Mm.
And this is the vocabulary that we're facing that is not being spoken on, is the fact that we have multiplied at higher levels than the obvious race of people who have been at the seat of power around the world. We are the proverbial rose that grew through concrete, and they didn't write a script for how to defeat a rose that can grow through concrete. They only wrote the recipe for killing roses like weeds. And now we're in this dynamic where we're underrepresented by our own. We're feared by our current leadership, whether in the Black community, the religious community, or the government. And that fear is buttressed by power, which keeps us in our place. And back to the beginning of this point with regard to commercial and underground hip hop, in the commercial realm, it's now being labeled a young man's game more than it ever has. And those young men are being put at the forefront in material drapings and material garmentry that doesn't have to do with the fact that we are people who have adorned ourselves with earthbound things from the beginning. These new artists are being adorned with material things that cost more than homes and put them in the crosshairs of the very environment that they came from. And that allows the powers that be to stay in power, because if we put little so-and-so in a video with $1 million worth of jewelry on and his entourage and let him talk that local tough neighborhood talk, all the other tough local neighborhood kids that want what he has, it's like anywhere that guy goes, he's walking through a favela. And as we all know, a tough guy in a favela is not necessarily a bad person. He just drinks coconut water at breakfast, lunch, and dinner and has to climb a tree to get it. And you look like a sandwich when you walk past the favela gate. So they're going to go get that. And it's by design. And it's the underbelly of the things that have kept us in this posture of needing and asking and wanting, because the artists that may very well have the social skills and the wherewithal to understand these things, because of the restrictions of what their record deal represents, they can't speak about these things for fear of losing this posture that they have. So now we're under this, you're banging your head on the ceiling. Even those that do aspire to this vocabulary, that ceiling has got spikes on it. Who wants to bang their head on a spiked ceiling fundamentally? So it's a hell of a dilemma.
Ooh. Well, listen, you laid it out there, and I'm sure the folks who view this episode are gonna have questions as it relates to like how you navigate those things. And so we'll wait for the feedback from that, because I don't want to run out of time. I see you donning your originals hat.
Yes, sir.
And want to kind of conclude the episode on a bit of a lighter note, but from a heavy time period. So we saw, DJs like yourself really kind of step up, lean in to really saving people from themselves during the pandemic by taking, your work that was normally done in, in clubs and in parties around, the world into people's homes, right? And on the internet. Would love kind of you to kind of talk about how the influence of, whether it's your partners in the originals like D Nice and Tony Touch and Clark Kent and Stretch, who kind of make up the originals, and of course yourself. Talk about like what kind of feedback was it like because I can only imagine people like emailing you or dropping in your DM saying, thanks to you, I didn't take my life today, or thanks to you, thanks to the fact that you were DJing on Twitch or on Instagram or wherever, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because so kind of as like both a parting word and kind of a story of the level of influence of the work that you do. Could you speak to what it's like to kind of hear that from people real time and in the moment, and was in that which was such a difficult time for so many people?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic basically put a fork in our world. As a working class disc jockey, our world is rooted in gatherings. Our world is rooted in us having a bully pulpit to present people with an opportunity to let their hair down. Uh, I think fundamentally our job is to leave you better than you were when you got there. Even if you came in the door happy, even if you came in the door with a pocket full of money or a bank account full of money. My job as a presenter in my field is to leave you better than you were when you came in the door. And when that got removed from the world, I think people began to realize how important community had become in their lives. Maybe community wasn't the driving word pre-pandemic, but once it's taken away, I've had people say to me, I've been a fan of yours for 20 years. That was my church. I stopped going to church when my grandparents passed away when I was a teenager, and I began coming to events like yours to find my foundation and to praise and worship and to find my higher self through the music and through the community of people that gather there to deal with that music at whatever capacity they deal with it, whether they're a wallflower, if they hang out at the bar, if they're on the dance floor. It's all of those dynamics that make up this rainforest that has become this super healthy environment. And then it was stripped away. We weren't able to gather anymore. And it was March of 2020, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And people were beginning to get on Instagram Live and talk about how they felt about what was happening. Artists began to get on Instagram Live and YouTube and Vimeo and all of these other outlets and began to speak about what's happening to us. And then D Nice did it. And when D Nice did it, the way he did it was so humble at the entry that he kicked down a wall without even trying. Because when he first got on that very first day, when he ended up with 2 million people in an Instagram live chat, in the very beginning, he wasn't DJing. He had his laptop out, he was playing music on it, and he was talking into the screen about his fear of what's happening and the fact that he was on the West Coast alone. His daughters weren't with him. His family wasn't with him. His brothers weren't with him. And our world has dried up. And I'm afraid. I'm nervous for my health. I'm nervous for my people. What about the people that I know that don't have the means that I have? How are they going to move forward? And he was on the phone with Clark Kent as he was doing it. And Clark's feedback to him was, you need to stop playing songs out of your iTunes and start DJing. That's what people need. That's what people want. And if you look at the bodies in this room that you've created, you went from 50 people to 1,000 people in 20 minutes, just humanizing yourself. Then he starts DJing. And as he starts DJing, people that weren't there for the vocabulary or for the sermon that he was given began to show up, because the people that were there for the sermon are telling their other friends, hey, man, you got to jump on D Nice's live right now. You're not going to believe what's happening. An hour later, it's 5,000 people. An hour after that, it's 25,000 people. An hour after that, it's 1 million. And people forget that D Nice was the first DJ to have a tenured position in the White House during the Obama administration. Any event that was thrown through Black political power from 2008 through both Obama terms, D Nice was the soundtrack for that. So, political cachet, social cachet, the shaking hands and kissing babies of being a public figure and a leader. I don't know very many people that have that wherewithal like Derek does. And 9 hours later, there's 2 million people in this live, and Derek's like, hey, Oprah. Hey, Michelle. Like, not even saying last names, like really on that first name basis vibration. And his energy level was at or higher than it was when he started. And that caused all of the rest of us to say, whoa, okay. So there is still a way to connect. We don't know how to monetize it just yet, but we don't have to lose all that connectivity. And then people like myself, who didn't know anything about platforms like Twitch, find out about Twitch. I'm like, whoa, so you telling me that I could broadcast myself through a gaming platform?
Word.
What? Great. Let's go. How much does it cost to join? What do I have to do? How can I get audio into this forum? And we worked it and worked it and worked it. And our years of audio visual professionalism, our years of dealing with show production and backline and signal path put us in a position to realize, like, whoa, I can take everything that I was doing in the world prior to this, all my branded parties, all the different events that I was doing under these different monikers and these different musical styles. I can now plant that right here in the internet and not only give myself an opportunity to continue to present, but to present as a peacock with a range of color and style and topical presentation. And I think the reason that people are feeling like we were saving their lives is because we were saving our own right before their very eyes. And who's not inspired by somebody that's climbing out of the mud? We were all climbing out of our own mud. And the people that come and enjoyed our entertainment were down in that mud with us. Some because they follow us, some because they're our brothers and sisters in arms at the same level or tier as us. And here we are again on the internet with arguably more interaction, because I can see what everyone is saying in the chat. If I have a moderator, my moderator can address people who want or need to be addressed. I, for the first time in my career, have a true bully pulpit, almost like a television producer. And I can program what vocabulary I want to or don't want to share with the public that chooses to follow me. And it was life-saving for all of us, because not only were we able to get in front of each other again, but as artists, we were able to monetize. D Nice is a unicorn. D Nice's monetization through Instagram and the things that he was able to do, that's just the stuff of being a unicorn. And you know how often we see unicorns. They're hardly ever. But for the rest of us who were using Twitch and other means of presentation, gaming platforms like that, where monetization is the way of the walk. I mean, the years prior, I'm like, how is this kid making $500,000 a year playing PlayStation games? Now I'm in the platform where that kid that makes $500,000 a year has made his bounty. And what I'm doing is another avenue towards the same means. All of a sudden, I'm not concerned about whether or not I can pay my rent. I'm not concerned about whether or not I can feed my child. I'm not concerned about whether or not I can put gas in my vehicle and go get groceries, because now I have this forum. And the people who were with me in the world prior to this unfortunate circumstance are willing to give up bits and pieces of what money they have now in order to get that. So we're all helping each other. The rainforest is reinvented, and now it's magnified. I mean, for me personally, it's magnified my profile tenfold. There were people on the other side of the planet that I was just a folklore to them. But now with internet access, you know, you're tangible. You're right there. I can reach out and touch you almost as if we're in the same room. So, you know, there was many blessings inside of that cursed time. And I'm really thankful to have been able to take advantage of it. I'm very thankful to have the relationships that I have with my brothers, the originals, particularly D Nice on topic, and the other brothers and sisters of ours in the community that have continued to show perseverance and continue to show ingenuity under this kind of pressure, and utilizing and taking advantage of all this technology and using their bully pulpit for the positive aspects that we're looking for in the beginning of this conversation anyway, which is to speak to the politics of the world, to speak to the dynamics that we're all suffering under, and to try to provide vocabulary that's rooted in solution, not just complaining or not just passing judgment or not just having negative things to say without having done research.
Well, listen, as one of those people whose lives you saved during the pandemic, I definitely want to thank you for not only your contributions then, but just your contributions to the culture as a whole. Definitely consider you an iconic figure in this thing, and thank you so much for sharing your story on the show. And I'm sure this will not be the last conversation we have with Rich Medina.
I pray it's not. I pray it's not. And I have to return fire and say that we are all thankful for and proud of you and what you represent and why you're in the position that you're in. And you got an army of brothers and sisters behind you that believe in why you are where you are. We know you're the man for the job. We know that there are other brothers and sisters that are nose hair behind you that want to have what you have. And we are championing you for the very same reasons, because without you, we don't have an opportunity to get inside the political machine the way we need to. So thank you for your service.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to open the door and keep it propped open, man. And thank you for joining Politics for the Culture. Again, one of many conversations to be had with so many, not only cultural influencers, but people of the culture and for the culture. So thank you again, Rich Medina, for being here.
Thank you for having me, sir.
All right.